Please do come and grab the seats. There's a few more at the front if you're coming to join us for our next session, which is adopting skills in the age of AI. So, as I said, there's a few more seats at the front. Please do come down to the front there. So, we've heard within the organisation some of the challenges of driving that change to be able to ensure that businesses are able to use the power of AI within the organisation. At the end there, we touched upon the importance of looking at the next generation and how we empower them with the right guardrails through their education. But at the heart of empowering young people is also looking at apprenticeships. And this is something which I personally have been very passionate about for many years. I see apprenticeships as being a fantastic way of getting the right skills to young people. And I think even more so now, in the age of AI, when technology is changing so quickly, and we've heard today, for all of today, how quickly the organisations are changing and having to try and adopt to this new technology. So apprenticeships really are a fantastic way, the only way really, to keep pace with that change. And I know many of you might even have been apprentices at some point, or if you're parents, you're thinking about apprenticeships for your children as well. And there are some structural challenges that we're going to look at today as well. So, without preamble, I'm delighted to welcome my guests here today. We have Joe Bishenden, the Chief Learning Officer for QA. So, Joe, welcome to the stage. And we have Rob Jones, who's the Large Enterprise Account Executive from Cambridge Park. And Rob, welcome as well. Thank you. So if I get you, first of all, to tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do at your organisation. I'll start with you, Joe. Could you explain to us a bit about your role?
Yes, nice to meet everyone. I'm Joe, I'm the CLO at QA. So QA has been around 40 years, and I know I'm not much younger. So we've been around 40 years, and we've actually been around since computers sort of became this thing that was on everyone's desk back in the 80s, and everyone was learning how to connect businesses up through technology. And what we've done is we've ridden this wave of technology over the last 40 years and moved into the apprenticeship space. Because apprenticeships, to be quite frank, roles associated with hard hats. Somebody in a vest, climbing a ladder, or lifting a bucket. And that is completely noble and very incredible roles that we need in the UK. What's been even better about apprenticeships is, especially over the last 10 years with the onset of something called the levy, which is where businesses have to pay a piece of their payroll each month into the growth and skills levy to fund apprenticeships. We've seen this boom of apprenticeships come across all different standards, including engineering, manufacturing, and importantly, for what we're talking about today, digital, data, tech and AI. Our company delivers both commercial training and apprenticeships. We've got about 10,000 apprentices on our books across England and Scotland. And it's our job to make sure that they're getting those really needed digital and AI skills into businesses, ideally as early as possible. But just as importantly, although it's not the focus for today, for people like me who probably might have done a degree in a different subject, but now might have to find a different career, especially if my career is being augmented by AI, or my job is, and I now need to think about a different way to engage in my role. So that's what QA does. We're an apprenticeship provider, and I'm really proud, as I said, to be at the helm of that and to get this really powerful, in my opinion, silver bullet into as many businesses as possible.
Thanks very much, Joe. And Rob, could you give us a bit of background on what you do?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a large enterprise account executive at Cambridge Park. We also play in the apprenticeships world in the UK, according to the apprenticeships levy. We are a specialist in data science and AI, so we don't do any other types of apprenticeships, and we're a specialist in that arena. My role is going into businesses over 1,000 population and speaking with their senior leadership to understand what is their skills enablement strategy and their AI transformation strategy, and where does that trickle down into the requisite skills that individuals will have to deploy agents, agentic factories, automations, workflows to drive productivity and really bring those businesses into this AI arena, as messy as it is, successfully, and to retain staff who, as Joe was alluding to, are hungry for these skills, all the way from school leavers and university graduates, all the way to those mid and senior career who are looking at this as such a tidal wave of transformation across industries that it is absolutely essential that there is a certain sort of breaking point of people that come with them on this journey. McKinsey say between 7 and 25% of a given population that they are upskilled and conscious and strategically thinking about deploying AI in the context of their business and industry to really keep themselves competitive. So that's what I do using the apprenticeships and data and AI that Cambridge Spark has in our suite.
Fantastic, thank you both for that. So let's look now at actually, let's pick up on the conversation we're having at the end of the last session about young people coming into the workplace, because you both work with very large organisations where you're equipping their young people with those skills. What are the new first steps that organisations require when it comes to skills for those young people? Joan, I'll come to you first on that.
Yeah, so I've got a bit of a challenge around this idea of career ladders. This term ladder was used when I was at school, possibly when most of the audience was at school, that everyone came in at this level called inexperienced. And then people got a bit more confident. And if you got a bit more confident, you became a bit more competent. And as you became a bit more competent, you got more stuff to do. Then as you got more stuff to do, you became, oh, you're a leader now. Now you're a leader, now you're an expert. And that kind of real traditional step through the ladder, I think AI has completely disrupted. And I really encourage people to think about not just ladders, but snakes and ladders now, because what we're entering now is an era where skills, in particular digital skills, some of them are going to be really important today, and some of them are going to disappear as quickly as we're needed. Because what's going to happen now is the skills half-life is going to go down from somewhere around 5 years when I first entered my career to something like Microsoft says, especially in digital and AI, the half-life of the skills is somewhere around 3 to 10 months. That's how quick you have to reskill yourself in this space nowadays. So what does that mean for that traditional ladder of coming in as this inexperienced person and then having to counter expertise? It means it's completely disrupted. And actually somebody who's 20 years into their career is going to be as inexperienced as someone who is 18 very shortly. And some would say the 18-year-old might have a better capacity to learn new digital skills quicker than somebody who's 20 years into their career. Some would say, probably about me. So what we have to do now is really think about what skills we want people to present when they first come into their first role. And I'll be honest, I think the list of skills is as old as the first job description ever came about. It's problem solving, it's creativity, it's thinking outside the box, and it's having a passion to be inquisitive and look for the answer. And I think those 4 skills are still as important today in the age of technology and AI as they were when someone went, if I strike 2 pieces of wood together, I get fired. Because it was inquisitive, it was problem solving, it was creativity. So for me, when we start thinking about what does the first steps look like for young people, we do have to go back to the school system and make sure that we absolutely value the power skills. We used to call them soft skills, we call them human skills, that are really important, because what actually is going to differentiate a 19-year-old coming into their first job is who's rolling up their sleeves, showing some resilience and going, let me have a go at this, because I think I can tackle it. So for me, we have to think about how do we build those skills up in our school population, sixth form populations, colleges, universities, and yes, of course, apprenticeships. And then I think employers have got a really interesting talent pool to work from, because now they're not hiring based on how many years service you've given this company or your level of expertise in our world, I don't know, Kubernetes or SQL databases, and that's the only digital terminology I'm going to use. But actually, who's showing the aptitude to go and problem solve this skill? And then guess what? I'm going to teach them about the bit of technology they need to do that bit of their job, because that technology will undoubtedly evolve 3 months hence from when they first learned it. So for me, it's actually what raw competencies, what power skills do we want people to present with as young people into our businesses? Then I can then take that real strong foundation and I can chuck any technology, digital, AI learning on top of that. That's my view anyway.
Brilliant, no, thank you. And I think that attitude to learning that you mentioned, that sort of resilience, it's a mindset shift That's critical. It's something that we've heard in different terms across the day, actually, is that actually to be able to keep pace with this pace of change, you need to have that mindset shift. And Rob, I wanted to come to you on this one as well. I mean, you're seeing companies who are much more focused on the technical skills, but even so, I'm sure you see some of the challenges those organisations face. So what would you say are the sort of the first steps that these young people need to have in terms of skills?
Well, I think, as someone who wasn't young too long ago, we're a digital native generation. I'm mid-millennial, and lots of friends of mine are Gen Z coming into the workforce, graduates, they're digital native from the get-go, so they actually have a bit of an advantage. And speaking on the point that my old alumni from Birmingham University, Greg, who was sitting just there in the previous session, for those who were here before, they do have actually, spinning the narrative a little bit, an advantage, because that problem solving, the agility of their minds, their technical nous with digital tools is such that it's so intrinsic that they can learn new things very quickly and problem solve, to Joe's point. So in terms of first steps that I think businesses I'm seeing do this stuff successfully so far, they are identifying the right graduates or early career individuals and aligning them with the right courses. Now, for us, obviously, that's apprenticeships. An example is the new level 4 AI and automation practitioner, or we call the AI workflow specialist, which is delivering them both hard and soft skills, although they're not technical necessarily. They have to be a machine learning wizard or a sort of sage of engineering. They're using low and no code automations, and I think these are the first steps. Because just like Greg was saying as well, they'll come in, they'll see processes that have existed for a long time, their manager is happy with, and they'll go, this is rubbish. We need to reassess this. We think we could put this into a multi-node workflow with agents in the middle that could make it go from 5 hours to 10 minutes and work against that resistance. And I think there's a bunch of soft skills that go along there as well that we can teach that enable people to negotiate internally, manage upwards, and be able to share their ideas and their curiosity, because they come with those digital skills and curiosity already.
Great, and I love the concept there about that curiosity that I think probably people in this room have a lot of. Imagining you look like a great intelligent bunch of people who are here because you want to learn, but it's something we need to encourage within those young people. Can you talk a little bit about some of those courses there? You mentioned the level 4 apprenticeship course there. How is that designed to reflect some of those cultural mindset changes which are needed? Because I can imagine there's lots of competencies which are the technical competencies, but how do you bring in some of the more mindset and cultural aspects?
Well, I mean, implicit in the course is a way in which you are demonstrating the effectiveness of the automations that you're building, and you're measuring the success of what you're doing. This isn't necessarily a hard skill, and building that automation in the first place is, how do I tell a story about what I've done and the impact it's having on the business? How much time, it always comes down to time and money, obviously, inevitably, every single occasion. And, we coach them in a one-to-one manner with our data mentors and our learner success coaches, which is a really important part of the way that we deliver our education to all of our clients. And they get that one-to-one tuition on how they're going to put this into a narrative and tell a story about what they're doing. And those are the ways in which they can, enable that curiosity, take the hard skills with the soft skills, and sort of deliver that value on the level 4 course in particular.
Yeah, and I think for the uninitiated, and apologies, I might be teaching you all to subjects here, but the way apprenticeships are naturally designed are through 3 things: knowledge, skills, and behaviours. Knowledge and skills, very obvious. Do you know something and can you do something? Behaviours is, what are those behaviours that you want to see of somebody who is proactively supporting and contributing to your business. And the reason that people like myself and Rob are absolutely passionate about apprenticeships is it's always about applied learning. Always. So it's not theoretical, it's not done in a classroom and then you wait for a rainy day to use that information. You hear all the same old adages, what did quadrilateral equations ever do for me? Try and learn it in year 10, and it's true, I've never used a quadrilateral equation in my life. But the point is, with an apprenticeship, it's about how you take something you've just learned and you put it straight back into your business. And that's the businesses. When you're getting that real-time knowledge and skills and seeing it applied in the moment, that's where, we all, like, you can hear my voice, it's that smile. Like, the application of that learning at the point of need is what makes these things absolutely amazing. And so what that does is it's your teaching resilience on the fly, because that project fails, guaranteed, first time you try and do it. But you keep going at it and suddenly you get that business value. And I think that's why, I was a teacher in a former life. I spent less time in university than I did in the classroom. For all intents and purposes, it was an apprenticeship. Most doctors were apprentices, because I bet you they spent more time on the ward than they did in university. We've just come to use the word in a different way now as a funding route, but applied learning has been at the heart of UK PLC for a long time, and this has now just formalised it and made it this silver bullet that I believe it is.
I think that's a really interesting point. And actually, I've been looking at how the first trade associations, because I run a trade association, how the first trade association started. And it was the guilds.
Yeah.
The guilds, which was set up in the guild hall, there's something like 115 of them now, but they represent all of those professions where they wanted to bring apprentices in because they wanted to get the standard and they wanted to bring with them young people in to train them up to be able to take over and become masters for that particular trade. And sitting in guilds is still one of the main qualification bodies in that space. So apprenticeships have got a really long history that we're kind of rediscovering almost in the UK. Now, on that point, I think we're violently agreeing that apprenticeships are a really good thing here, and I'm sure in the audience as well. So I want to look at the challenge, which is, I've got teenage kids, and my eldest is 17, and we've been talking about apprenticeships because obviously I'm very passionate about it as well. And she says to me, Dad, there aren't enough. It's harder to get an apprenticeship now than getting into Oxbridge. Now, whether or not that's true or not, it is hard and there aren't enough. Part of that is industry, so we'll come on to that in a minute. What more can we do as businesses to hire apprentices? Part of that is government. But I wanted to get your perspectives, both of you, in terms of what should we be doing to ensure that there are more apprenticeship places. What needs to be done? Joe, come to you on that one first.
This is such a timely conversation. This morning I was at an event in Westminster held by the St Martin's Group, who just launched their employee research on how to get more employers using apprentices. So dig out their report, it's really interesting. You're absolutely right. We can put up a job on behalf of, we work with small businesses, by the way, as well as large enterprises. We can put up a job advert for an apprentice and have 250 applications in 24 hours. Not one word online. We know that the big enterprise grad programs, apprenticeship programs are more difficult to get into than Oxbridge now. This is all really, really common.
So that's true, that's that.
Absolutely, it's so difficult to get on the top tier apprenticeship programs. It's much harder to get on one of those. They wouldn't want a 40k salary while getting your degree. I mean, sign me up, I'm there. Especially with the cost of student loans, etc. And now, and then actually what we're seeing is degree apprenticeships, which was this great social mobility move that allow people to do degrees without the cost of student loans. What we're seeing now is actually a lot of people from the lower deciles are actually getting pushed out of degree apprenticeships because we're seeing people who've got the means and approaches to write good applications actually succeeding more in getting onto these programs. But that's a question for a different day, because I'm not here to talk about social mobility, which is my pet peeve. So what we're going to do, there are definitely not, this is a supply and demand problem. It is so difficult for employers to take on apprentices, particularly young people. And the top three things that came out today: one, apprenticeships require off-the-job training, which is about 20% of the week. So 20% of the week someone is learning, fine you might say, but they need supervising. And now what you're talking about is someone else giving up their time to supervise someone new coming into the business. That was the number one bugbear this morning. The second one was around, to be quite frank, the bureaucracy and paperwork and how difficult it is to actually work this system. And then the third one was more about time again and things like that. So we need to make it easy, especially for small and medium businesses, to support people coming into apprenticeships. So the third one was around pastoral care. It was around 16, 17 and 18 months coming into business and actually needing support with workplace skills. How do you set up an outlook invitation? How do you dress for work? How do you shake someone's hand and look them in the eye and say, how are you doing? Some of these basic work readiness skills, which used to happen in work experience in year 10. Again, a point for another day I won't get onto. But what we're seeing is a real struggle with people being work ready at 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever you want to call it. And so actually the funnel for young people coming into apprenticeships is drying up compared to using apprenticeships to reskill your existing member of staff. Hey Rob, you're in sales. Do you fancy coming and being my data analyst? Here's an apprenticeship for you. because Rob already has workplace skills, he already knows the business, it's easier to train Rob than it is to take on the 18-year-old, despite employer incentives, no national insurance contributions, etc. So what we have to do is start to tweak the chain, not break it, and start to encourage younger people coming to apprenticeships by making it easier for employers to spend their levy giving the support to 18-year-olds that they need. But unfortunately, levy is really is shackled to only paying for training, not for paying for the support around the apprentice that they need in those first few months coming into work. So unless there's anyone from Skills England here, sometimes they can hear me and I get told off. But what we really need to do is think about how we build a system from schools through to work readiness, through to apprenticeships, and then we will see this value chain flow from somebody at school right through to being a productive member of the business. And for me, if we can get that little cog turning just a bit better, we'll unlock this real power.
Great, thank you. And I think on that point about Skills England, that's very well made as well. Part of what we're doing at UKAI with John Cope, who's heading up our working group on skills, is very much bringing together the AI industry, because the government has signalled many times how important AI is to the economy, which is fantastic. And we're saying if that is true, then this has to be one of the mechanisms, one of the most important fundamental mechanisms to unlock that economic growth is getting apprenticeships in AI into organisations. But coming back to the point on what can we do here, Rob, in terms of getting more apprenticeships available, because there is a bottleneck that demand is outstripping supply.
Yes, but you would be surprised. I mean, my day candidly is spent reaching out to, speaking to L&D people, leaders, strategic leaders at enterprises all over the UK. I think you'd be surprised to learn just how often I come across almost untouched levy pots. Now, there are several reasons for this, which I won't go into too much detail about, but some of them is some of the behaviour in the industry in recent times, in terms of how they've put together cohorts and other things like that. But I think to answer your question, I think practically speaking, right now, some of those conversations with some of those businesses that have this incredible lever that they can pull to attract talent, drive transformation, and embed AI and digital skills into their business are starting to build graduate cohorts with me for September. And one of the ways that we're doing that, and we see the most value from, is cumulatively. So I'm working with these leaders to build cohorts of 15, 20, 25 at a time, who then all learn together. And by osmosis, and this is cross-function, these graduates will go into different, either a rotation or they'll go into a particular role, and the apprenticeship is bound to their employment contract, and maybe a month for onboarding, obviously, so they can learn how to work. These people are fresh to the workforce. And then they immediately begin some formal learning that, as Joe mentioned, is about 20% of their working time. But remember that apprenticeships, and the way Apprenticeship build our programs, is they are implicitly flexible. It's not 1 day out of 5 that's blocked out. It's 2 hours on a Thursday afternoon, and maybe a bit of e-learning on a Monday morning, a Friday afternoon. And those hours are built around their duties so that they are still performing, and implicitly with the authority and sign-off of their manager and the support of their manager. What we're seeing when we've done these types of exercises before is a cumulative effect of the results and feedback and ROI that you get there. And obviously you get 15, 20, 25 happy apprentices and new people starting a business. And that drives loyalty to the organisations they've worked for, because they've spent 13, 15, 18, even £22,000 on the formal education, on top of salary and benefits and all the rest of it. And that is some of the ways that practically we're trying to address this, because you'd be astonished how much levy budget is left out there. It's amazing.
Could you just quickly explain the levy? Because I imagine most people here understand it, but some people might not understand the process. I'm sure you talk about this every day. So very quickly, could you just explain the levy, how it works, and why people here, why it might be relevant to companies here?
I'll give a very mechanical explanation and probably hand over to Joe for a bit more context. But mechanically speaking, if you're over £3 million in payroll, you put 0.5% of that money into a pot that you are obligated to use on in-work apprenticeships. And the government sets a bunch of standards, and the businesses like UKAI, Cambridge Spark, and our small community of peers put together curriculums around those. And obviously, most of them right now are AI and data science skills, and That's pretty much it. And if you don't use that money within what used to be a 2-year period, but in August a 1-year period, it goes back to the government. The businesses sometimes see that as an extra tax. And again, that's why I'm so surprised often why I find that they haven't spent it, because they've essentially got this requisite pot of money to no capex on educating the workforce. It sounds like a deal that's too good to be true, but it's there.
It's crazy, isn't it, really? I mean, the companies are paying this as a kind of a hypotheticated, can I say that word, you know what I mean, tax, which is ring-fenced, and yet they're not actually using it. Joe, how do we actually get companies to tap in and start using this levy? Is enough being done to educate them about this?
It depends if you ask the CFO, the CLO, or the CEO of the company about that levy. Look, once you start building up, as Rob's alluded to, once you start building up a number of apprentices inside an organisation, you do need an infrastructure around that to support not only the apprentices, but their line managers, etc. So some people just write this thing off as I've got to pay it. It is a tax. Let's not call it a levy. It is a tax. It should have been called a tax, to be quite frank, because it was never ever built to be fully spent. You can find that, it was never meant to be of that regard. But what you need to do is, it becomes a line item somewhere. And you see, it tends to be divorced from the L&D budget. L&D budgets, for those of you close to L&D budgets, tend to be, along with marketing, one of the most transient budget lines going. It's either in 1 year or it's out. And if you've got any kind of responsibility for L&D, you've probably seen your L&D budget go down year on year. In fact, I think in the UK we're the lowest of the European nations to put into L&D budgets by a considerable amount. And it came about because of levy. Because as CFOs were seeing this money go out for levy, they took down the L&D budget. Look at the government's industrial strategy report. It's all in there, the actual numbers. The problem is it's now been written off, and as L&D departments have become reduced down because the L&D budget's gone down, the infrastructure to support apprenticeships has sadly declined as well. So the quickest way to get levy spent is to invest in 1 or 2 members internally to start managing that levy pot. Because as I'm sure we'll come on to, the ROI in the apprentice is huge inside an organisation. I mean, multiples huge. So the quicker you can get a 50, 60, 70k job in there to start managing apprenticeships, the quicker you'll see that levy pot be exploited for good and not just written off. So that would be top tip number 1 for a business. If you're a small and medium business, which 70-80% of the UK companies are small and medium businesses, you haven't got a levy pot. Don't worry, you get your apprenticeships for free, because the unspent levy that the big companies aren't using goes back into Treasury, back into the magic money pot, and you can draw down from that. But loads of small and medium businesses do not know that, because all we ever say is your levy pot, how are you spending your levy pot? I haven't got a levy pot. So for anybody who deals with small and medium businesses, or you are one and you want an apprenticeship, the best thing I can tell you to do is come and speak to a provider, or go and find your big supply chain, who's part of your supply chain, and ask them for money. Because they have unspent levy pots and they are allowed to gift it to anyone they want. So if they haven't spent their full pot, you can knock on their door and say, hey, I'd really like to take on a marketing assistant. It's going to cost £17,000 or whatever the flipping that is for marketing, I forget. And they can say, oh, of course they can. But they can also say yes, and then guess what? You've now got a connection to your big supply chain. And I think if we can encourage this spider web of levy gifting, levy sharing, levy transfer, or all its formal names, then actually we can get small businesses dropped into big businesses, and we can start to share this talent pool. And we can get this flow of talent around our industries or businesses or local areas really quickly. But nobody knows about it.
Exactly, and I'm glad you brought up the supply chain there as well, because that is a really fascinating aspect of it. I'm glad it's still going, because this has been around for a while, in terms of you should be speaking to the companies who you're working with in the supply chain, because you can access their levy as well to pay for your training. So it's a fantastic opportunity. But coming back to this question, whose job is it to actually do this? I mean, you are both passionate, and it's your job, and you have companies that put apprenticeships out there. But broadly, there's a really big task to do here. Who should be doing this? Joe, I'll come back to you on this one first.
Yeah, so I think that when apprenticeships came out of DfE and went into Skills England, everybody went, woohoo! I mean, why it wasn't called Skills UK, again, will stick on a back burner, because, I'm from Carlisle, it's a border town. As many people work in Scotland as live in England, you know what I mean? And you can't access apprenticeship levy in Gretna Green, even if you live in Carlisle. You have to do a different route. Question for a different day. But whose job is it? It should be Skills England's job. They're the whole premise of Skills England, again, IMHO, not in my humble opinion, not QAs, in case is that they were going to be the glue between the skills requirements and the funding pot to access it. And when they moved on to DWP, whenever it changed, a year ago, 6 months ago, when they moved on to DWP, again, brilliant. We're now out of the policy area Department for Education, and we're now in the applied skills work. There's action word in there. We can join up the supply chain from levy pot to apprenticeship standards, through to getting people into jobs, through to their career, and ideally, we'd all like to retire at one day. I don't know when it is now, but and get our pensions. So my entire hope and optimistic outlook is under DWP there is a means to join this all up. So you get the work joined up along with the skills, using levy as a mechanism to join companies together. The machinery of government isn't there yet to do this properly. So that's why I said talk to a provider, because we know how this stuff works behind the scenes. So we can tell you how to go and find some money. We even get money donated to QA from companies that haven't spent their levy pot. They put it into our pot so we can then distribute it out to small and medium businesses. So you're going to have to find the answer, I'm afraid, because it's not getting out to you very well.
Thank you. And I'd encourage you all, whatever your industry is, to get involved with some of your trade bodies. So if you're in the creative sector, get involved with Creative UK. I'm sure they're doing some fantastic work in this space. We're very focused on this, so that I know that lots of trade bodies are thinking about apprenticeships as well. So I wanted to you mentioned ROI, Joe, but I wanted to bring you in as well, Rob, here on looking at actually how can we quantify the value which apprentices are delivering in businesses. And can you maybe give us a few examples of where you've seen with companies you've worked with that an apprentice has delivered some of that efficiency, productivity, value?
Yeah, absolutely. So the gift from the government, an unusual thing, in Christmas was the level 4, and as soon as we humanly could, we were delivering this in close cohorts to large groups of learners from a given company on their tools in the context of their business, and very, very quickly trying to get them to build automations and measure the impact that they were having. It comes in 3 phases, but the first phase is about 6 weeks, and the whole point is we throw the apprentices into the deep end and we say, show us some ideas of automations in your function, let's say procurement, and show us 2 or 3 of those, and your data mentor and your learner success coach will rationalise that, pick the low-hanging fruit and go and automate it. And then later in the programme, you're taught, as I mentioned before, how to measure the success of what you've done, which ultimately comes down to time and money. Some of the success that we had launching the programme with individual learners were, we had an individual who was in the financial reporting team who saved a quarter of a day per supplier per month. These are a team of 20, and they have a lot more than 1 supplier per person, which ended up being, and this is from module 1, 6 weeks on programme, a 60-day for a full-time employee time saved. And that's from module 1 of 7. So this particular course and its ROI, which is measurable, and they're taught how to measure it and communicate that back to the business, is absolutely astronomical. And this is just the beginning. And don't get me wrong, what they built in module 1 is not an all-singing or dancing agent that's doing their bidding all over the place. It's not simple, but it's not sophisticated. They get taught how to do advanced workflow engineering later in the course and the curriculum. But those results are just early on. I also launched this with a partnership, a big online publisher, with quite a few creatives actually on the cohort as well, 25 of them. And their cumulative effect, as I'm coming back to saying something that's amazing in apprenticeships, was an entire full-time employee from a group of them, which is crazy, and I can't wait to see what they do from module 2 to 7, because it could be anything, because there's compounding effect there, and that as it gets more sophisticated, it will be a curve upwards in just how much time they're saving. So the ROI statistics just from that one program is astonishing, and we're seeing it get so prevalent now, it's everywhere.
Amazing. And Joe, could I bring you in that as well to share some examples of delivering value in ROI?
Yeah, it's funny actually. I was talking to a client about this yesterday. Very similar. I said that earlier about apprenticeships being applied. So it doesn't take more than a handful of days before somebody's actually doing something really productive. And I came across this story yesterday of this girl who was on a data course that we do, a data level 4 course. And within 3 weeks, she'd identified £268,000 of funding risk in her particular organisation that had fallen between the cracks because we're running off Excel. And she managed to build some kind of something, as I said, I'm not digital. And she flagged, did you know there was £268,000? I think it was not been collected or been sat in payments processing for months, and nobody bothered to look at it. And literally brought in 268k in a month. I'm like, wowzers, give her a promotion. But this is the kind of thing I was talking about. When you combine a bit of digital know-how alongside being inquisitive and just getting yourself involved, magic things can happen. And there's loads of stories like this from, the agentic stuff on AI level 4, where people are building basic agents within days of starting the courses, to huge impacts around, we do a lot of cyber security, and, if you ask most CEOs what their big challenges are, nobody wants a data breach. That's one of the things that keeps people up at night, yeah? And so actually you see some of what these cyber students are doing, apprentices, to try and lock down potential attacks, because especially where a lot of people, as Rob was saying earlier, digital native, they're hobbyists, they know how to crack the system and then they can rebuild it. So I think this ROI point is incredible, and it's not just the business impact. We talk a lot about the social return on investment as well, and actually the latest data that we have shows that every £1 you put into an apprenticeship, £7.29 is going back into the local economy, and being saved off the benefits bill or the support bills, etc., etc. So it goes beyond just what the business is cleaning up as well. It goes actually as a society. We are all benefiting from every single apprentice that goes into a course.
Thank you. You touched upon the creatives industry, and this is a creative and technology festival. So I wonder whether I could get you both to think about some examples specifically where apprenticeships have been valuable to creative businesses, whether that be in the specific individuals or in the teams or across the organisation. And maybe you could, Rob, do you want to kick off on that and just kind of share some of the creative industries you worked with? Yeah,
so in that cohort I mentioned, the 25 online publisher, one of them was actually we're launching the second one this month. Our head of AI brought on for me to speak to the whole group to introduce the program, and told me that they've got some curious yet slightly AI skeptical creative people in the room today, which you're going to have to navigate, Rob. So I did my best, and a couple of them, this lady spoke up and said, look, I'm a senior editor here, I write a lot of copy, and I've been doing this a long time, and I'm a little bit frightened about what this will do to my career. And I've seen lots of people talk about it, everyone around there. And I said, look, the truth of the matter is, what you're going to learn on this program, and she signed up and doing some amazing things already, is it's just going to basically quieten all the noise around the fun stuff that you do, and the thing that you as a creative really actually enjoy. The point of AI is often, the beauty is in the banal, some of the process automation, the quietening of the noise, and my partner is an executive producer at Saatchi, and she's talking to me about this all the time. She's saying, I've got my creative teams here, terrified of what the new meta tool that's being released, not just in future may be already, where you prompt it, you have a 30-second advert. It's just not that simple. And when we are deploying these at scale with businesses that have pockets of creatives in them, or indeed are creative-led organisations, where we're teaching them in the apprenticeships to add value is to help them with iterating their ideas. It's not to take them away from the actual ideation that they're doing. It's just about taking away all the time that they spend on the stuff that isn't fun, stuff that creatives love doing, and they're loving it, and they're saving them hours a week. They're spending more time, they're delivering higher value work, and that's only the beginning. This will become more and more and more prevalent. And we are trying to navigate that tricky conversation with creatives as best we can, because we do understand the fear that's there. but we're trying to position it as simply a method for them to focus more on high value stuff that they do and eliminate that low value work that they hate, quite frankly.
Thank you. And just on the point around some of the fear and anxiety, I mean, we've touched upon that a lot. I don't know how long the audience has been here, but we have tried to address that in UKAI House today about what it means to be responsible, ethical and sustainable as an industry, and why we're really sort of carving out that as an area where we want to focus, because we know that if we want to be successful as AI businesses in the UK, we have to address some of those areas of concern. But I want to bring you in on that one, Joe, as well, just in terms of like how, can you give us some examples of where you've engaged with creative industries with apprenticeships as well?
Can I slightly change it and say QA is a creative company? We design learning. We have animators, learning designers, video producers, script writers, because we're creating thousands and thousands of hours of content every single week. We had to learn the hard way by convincing our own teams to start adopting an AI journey. And like every other company, just because we teach AI doesn't mean we've got all the answers of AI. We've got this beautiful AI driverless QA back at home. You know, so I think, I kind of go back to a personal reflection on this one and go, yeah, we had a tough battle at the beginning when we started to adopt some tooling in our creative functions at QA. Like, well, hang on a minute, you're going to get rid of my job. And all the fears that we've talked about, actually we've hired more people. Because, as we've used AI tooling, as Rob said, to take away the noise, it's the workflows, it's the handoffs that are actually the things taking up time away from creativity. That's what we ended up using AI to support with. And what we've and now what we've got is this brilliant human in the loop blend of the human being the creative and AI just being the email system or the workflow system that talks between two creatives, especially when people are remote or based around the world. So we've seen it from the point of view of actually trying to enable it inside our own business. Because, to be quite frank, we've got to drink our own champagne. We're telling everybody to get on the AI bus. We've got to be able to adopt it internally as well. So that's where we started, and then we work with lots of media companies, etc. And in all fairness, we haven't had the biggest of battles because our standards mix doesn't necessarily infiltrate inside. We don't do video production standards and things like that, for instance. We've been talking about AI as a tool, not as a replacement for creativity.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you both. We're going to have to wrap things up there, but that's given us a really valuable insight into some of the challenges around encouraging more apprenticeships, both in employers, but also nationally. How can we try and get the government to support what we're doing here? Also, we've got a job ahead of us to really sort of encourage all of our colleagues, all of our peers, our children, to look at apprenticeships, because they really are a fantastic way of being able to bring the skills into an organisation, which will help to those organisations to succeed in the age of AI. So I'd like to thank both Rob and Joe for joining me on the stage today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.